Now, obviously, a huge part of our responsibility when it comes to certificates is dealing with the certificate authority structure. We took a look at the root CA and a subordinate CA. Let's take a moment, though, to talk about certificates themselves. There's some aspects of management you definitely should be responsible for. This is a hands-on lab, so feel free to fire that up now. Inside the hands-on lab, get logged into DCNUG1. What I've done for you is I've prepped DCNUG1 as a certificate authority. I'm sure you're not surprised, but what I did was made this one an enterprise CA. So this is the configuration where the certificate services integrate tightly with Active Directory. Let's see some of the giveaways that make that a reality. In other words, what signs are we going to see that we do have an Active Directory integrated certificate services? Well, if we come into the Tools menu of Server Manager and you go to your Certification Authority area and you maximize it, let's expand the server and notice we have this Certificate Templates node. This was not there when we were dealing with the standalone type CA configuration. So we have these certificate templates, and here is some ready to go for us. Now, an obvious question becomes, can we add additional templates? And can we modify templates for that matter for our purposes? And the answer is yes, we can. If you right-click the Certificates Template node and choose Manage, you will bring up a new Microsoft Management Console, and that is with the Certificate Template snap-in in place. So you can see all these different certificate templates that exist. Notice there's schema version and version that the template uses. The greater the version that the template uses, the more features that you can do with that template. And something else that you want to consider is the permissions that are on the template. So watch this. If we select the Exchange User Template, for instance, and we right-click and go to Properties, there's going to be a Security tab on this particular certificate template. And notice authenticated users have to have read in order for the template to be beneficial. Then we have domain admins getting read, write, and enroll, as well as enterprise admins getting that capability. One of the capabilities that we'll have, and we'll see how to configure this inside of the Active Directory integrated certificate services like this, otherwise known as an enterprise CA, is we have the ability to do auto enrollment when it comes to certificates and user accounts. And I'll show you an easy way in which you can configure that. But please note, we could go in here, we could take like this Exchange User Certificate, right-click it and duplicate it, and we could create a new template based on this existing template. So I'll give it a template display name of My Awesome Template, for instance, and we could go in here and we could manipulate the parameters, the validity period, whether or not we're publishing the certificate in Active Directory, how we're going to do request handling for the certificate, the cryptography in use, all that great stuff. When we say OK, we have our awesome template in here inside the certificate templates. Now, how do we make this available for actual deployment? Once we're done manipulating the template, we slide back over to the certification authority, and for the certificate templates node, we right-click this time and say New Certificate Template to Issue. That's going to bring up a dialog box of all of our templates, including the one we just created that's called My Awesome Template. We select that, we say OK, and now our awesome template is in the certificate templates area of our certification authority, so we could actually issue this template. And when it comes to assigning these templates, what's known as certificate enrollment, we know we can do it manually. There's web-based enrollments we can do. But one of the things I promised to show you was the auto-enrollment capability that we would have in an Active Directory environment. So minimize your tools, and let's go to the Tools menu in Server Manager, and let's go to Group Policy Management. We know we can control certificates as part of Group Policy, but we haven't seen the auto-enrollment capability because this is the first time we've been dealing with an enterprise CA. So I'm going to go to the default domain policy. I'm going to right-click it and choose Edit. Do you remember where our group policy settings were for the certificate services? If we go to Computer Configuration, Policies, Windows Settings, Underneath Windows settings, we're going to have security settings. Underneath security settings, we're going to have public key policies. If you select this node, over on the right, we see that there is a certificate services client auto enrollment group policy feature that we can enable. You can go in here and say we want to enable the auto enrollment configuration model. We can have renewed expired certificates. The renewal of those expired certificates happen automatically. We can update pending certificates, remove revoke certificates. We can update certificates that use certificate templates. How awesome. We can decide the percentage of remaining certificate lifetime to create a log expiry event. And we could even use additional stores for the certificates themselves. So if we say OK, after enabling this, auto enrollment is a possibility for us in our design. Now, something else that we better be aware of how to do is to create a recovery agent. A recovery agent is going to be absolutely critical when we have people doing things like encrypting information using certificates and then potentially losing the information they need to decrypt. If we are a key recovery agent, then we can do that work out there for these users. So let's go back to our certificate template console, and inside here we see there is a key recovery agent template. We're going to go to the properties of this template, and we're going to go to the Issuance Requirements tab, and we're going to clear this CA Certificate Manager approval requirement and say OK. This essentially makes this key recovery agent template something that we really could use for this purpose. Now what we'll do is we'll go back over to our Certificate Templates node, right-click, and say New Certificate Template to Issue, and we're going to bring in that recovery agent template that we just enabled. So it takes a moment, of course, for the list to come up, but once it does, we'll select the key recovery agent from the list. Where is it? There it is right there. We'll say OK. And now we have the key recovery agent template inside our Certificate Templates node for usage. The next thing that we're going to do is actually practice enrolling a certificate, a manual enrollment, which is going to be great. We want to do this for the key recovery agent template. So what we're going to do is go down to the search, and we're going to bring up a Microsoft Management Console. And inside the MMC, we're going to add and remove a snap-in for the certificates console. So let's go to our blank MMC, go to File, Add Remove Snap-in, and we want the certificates node. So let's choose Add, and we're going to do it for my user account, so we'll say Finish. So here we have the certificates for the current user. Notice there's this personal node right here. We're going to right-click this personal folder, go to All Tasks, and we are going to request a new certificate. In the enrollment wizard that comes up, we're going to do the Active Directory enrollment policy and choose Next. Next, we're going to see the certificates that we can go ahead and request, and there it is, the My Recovery Agent certificate right there. We're going to say we want to enroll this certificate. We see that is completed successfully, so we'll choose Finish, and we have just enrolled that appropriate certificate. We can go ahead and close up this console for certificates. We won't bother to save it, so just say No to the Save Console window. And now we're ready for our final step here to allow for the key recovery. We have to go to our CA, so we're going to right-click our CA, and we're going to go into Properties. From the properties of our CA, there's going to be a Recovery Agents tab that we want to look for. So it takes a moment. As we know, we have to be patient to bring up the Properties window. But once it comes up, we're looking for Recovery Agents. There it is. And we're going to say we are interested in archiving the key. And the key recovery agent certificates that we're going to use, we'll go ahead and select Add. It's going to see that we have a key recovery agent certificate out there. We'll say OK. It's going to bring it into the interface. We'll say OK, and we will restart certificate services now, and we have fully enabled the key recovery agent functionality. And like I said, this can be a real key component for us when we're in charge of things like the encryption of information with digital certificates in our environment. Now keep in mind, just because you've set up a recovery agent, it wouldn't be able to be used with a certain certificate unless you enable that through the template. For instance, if I right-click this web server template here and say duplicate the template, then I can go to the request handling tab and I can say archive the subject's encryption private key. That's going to be the ingredient that's going to allow that recovery agent functionality to work that we configured. What it's doing right now, by the way, is it's looking for anyone that might have certificates based on this template before it allows us to make that change. That's pretty cool. So we would call this web server recovery agent, for instance. And now this template does allow the use of the recovery agent functionality that we set up. So in this hands-on lab nugget, we took a look at certificates, and particularly certificates in an enterprise CA environment. We know this would allow auto-enrollment. We can publish certificates thanks to things like group policy and Active Directory working together. Very, very powerful model. We also took a look in this nugget at the recovery agent, something you should definitely know how to set up, and we walked through those steps, and we even saw how you can go into your certificate templates and enable them for usage with the key recovery agent. I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.